week 4 of Loki. 2 more weeks to go. Lots of stuff moving. Lots of people are getting zapped and changed around, and heads are coming off. Just a whole bunch. It's actually interesting. I follow a couple of like IGNs stuff like that, and some people were complaining that this episode was kind of slow, nothing going on. I disagree.
Really?
I disagree. I think this episode is going to be one that when you look back on, it's going to be kind of like pivotal.
Yeah. Man, the only thing I saw people saying was that there was a lot going on.
Well, see, that's the thing, and this is a quick aside. Like I teach composition in college at college, and I teach rhetoric, and a lot of these like YouTubers and people who write for a living, their whole goal is to get people to be persuaded to their ends, and I get that. But part of that's a weakness. Like if you're like absolute in your argument, then when you're wrong, you look like an idiot, you know? And so a lot of this stuff, I kind of feel like it's a little self-defeating. But let's first start with the very beginning of the episode. One of the things that you said, I think maybe 2 episodes ago, was you highlighted a plot hole. Why don't you get into that?
Yeah, so I still think basically what I said at the beginning. Either they wrote a plot hole that they didn't need to, or we still have something to learn about the TVA. And I'm really leaning towards there's still like lies that the TVA has told that haven't been revealed yet.
Why do you think that? Why do you think that?
To explain this. So here's the basis of it. And I know we've talked about it a few times, but the whole thing is if there's a sacred timeline, and so that's the only timeline there is, there's a sacred timeline, any Loki that branches off of that has to look like Tom Hiddleston.
Keep going.
Because it's the sacred timeline. So the fact that Sylvie does not look like Tom Hiddleston means that she didn't even branch off of the sacred timeline. She came off of a completely different timeline. So either that's a plot hole or the TVA lied. They never, like maybe there never was a multiversal war, or there was, and they never actually got down to a sacred timeline. And I think that's really what it's not stated. In fact, Sylvie still refers to the sacred timeline in this episode as if that's a fact. But I think at the very end of the episode, we are given we're actually in the post-credit scene, we're given a very clear indication that there is not a sacred timeline. And the TVA was just lying about that all along.
Well, so I think I want to state this. I want to be like, for now, I want to stick with what they've said until they seem different. I agree with you that the sacred timeline stuff is looking more and more iffy. But the Sylvie character does say in the episode that when the child becomes like diverges too much, then it kind of like highlighted that divergence existed.
Yeah, but if there's a sacred timeline, Loki's already born in the sacred timeline.
Yeah, but it's interesting too. It's like,
so Loki can't be born again as a girl.
No, you're right. So there's either a couple. There's a couple of different hypotheses. One, that like at some point there was a parallel universe created where Loki was born a girl, and
that would be another timeline.
And then the TVA allowed that to occur until they didn't. So that's one. 2, it's all a lie. And there's a bunch of branching timelines all over the place, and they're only pruning certain ones. That could be a possibility.
Right.
And to be honest with you, the very end of the episode, we have 4 new Lokis. We have a black guy who's a Loki. We have an old man who's in the traditional Loki costume. We have Kid Loki, and we have a Loki who's wearing a lizard wearing a Loki helmet, which is going to be fantastic next week. I can't wait to see that. So in that, and
right, when I saw that, it reminded me of you telling me about the frog that became Thor.
Yeah, it's actually funny. I wonder if they're going to play into that. But then we only get to see that because when Loki gets zapped, right? He gets sent somewhere
He
else.
gets pruned. They prune.
They prune him, but he doesn't die. He goes somewhere else. So the key question is: does everyone that gets pruned go somewhere else?
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Like,
And
will he find Mobius there too?
I don't know. Hopefully, I like the character because he got zapped too. But the biggest thing here is there was a place. Like, remember at the very beginning where Sylvie and Loki were about to die. There's an emotional connection between the two. And I think the TV show, or I think some people are going to assume that the divergence occurred because two Lokis fell in love with each other. I don't think that's what it's going to be. I think.
What do you think it's going to be?
I think the whole episode, the whole season, the whole thing has been about, can Loki be different than what he was supposed to be? At the very beginning, episode 1, they alluded that the only reason he exists is to give heroes a chance to shine. Like, he's the villain that they get to beat up. But what happens if Loki becomes someone with empathy, who cares for someone, who generally has an emotional reaction? And then what happens if that happens? And I think the show is trying to create a character arc where Loki doesn't have to be this 100% villain, where he could be someone else. And so I think the show. So I don't see the show. The show might do this. We'll see. The show might have these two people, Loki and Sylvie, who are the same people, basically, fall in love with each other. But I don't think that's going to be the case. I think what's going to happen is that we're going to see these Loki characters become not heroes, but better versions of themselves, maybe heroes, and that's the divergence. One more thing, when it comes to the villains and the timekeepers and stuff, I have an idea what's going to happen, but I'm curious what you thought of that scene where Sylvie cuts off the timekeeper's head, but automatically it shows that they're robots. So what did you think? Did you know that was going to happen?
I mean, ever since the second episode, I've assumed that there's a lot of lies being told by the TVA. So that wasn't surprising to me that the timekeepers were placeholders. They weren't really there. They were, robot figureheads.
Yeah.
But it does make me think, like, who is really running the TVA if it's not them?
Yeah, so that's going to be the whole thing, and that's what a lot of people are going to be speculating. You know, like, you have a lot of people speculating who the true villain is.
Is it Ravonna? Is she really running the scenes?
Renslayer?
Yeah.
So let's throw out some theories. Could it be Ramona Renslayer? I don't think so.
I mean, she took a big turn in this episode.
She's a bad guy. She knows what's going on. She understands that everybody's a variant. So she has inside knowledge. We stated at the first episode of our podcast that she is connected to Kang because they're love interests in the comics. So maybe
Krang is from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, Krang is from Teenage Mutant. Kang is from the comics.
Yeah.
K-A-N-G. Kang and Krang.
Right.
Okay. Which is interesting. I wonder if that's where the Teenage Mutant Ninja... I wonder if that's Eastman and Lloyd. I wonder if they got that from... that's interesting. Anyway.
Could be.
Note,
Do the characters look similar?
No, not at all. Got distracted.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay. That's theory number 1. I don't think that's true. I don't think she's in charge. 2, it could be Kang. I don't think so, and here's why. If it is Kang, then we'll see him. We'll see the actor who's playing Kang in this show. But we know that he's going to appear in Ant-Man. And I just don't think it's him. Kang the Conqueror is a conqueror. He actually conquers timelines. He conquers times. His whole goal is to be the ruler of all time. If he controlled the TVA, he'd be done. And he wouldn't have to conquer anything. So it doesn't seem like that would do. I don't see that happening. I do think this show is going to lead into more time travel stuff in the Marvel shows, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, 100%. And I do think Kang is going to be a big player into that. But I don't think he's going to be the big bad of this show. That's 2. We have a guy named Immortus, which is the future version of Kang. He could be the big bad. That's the theory, but it's the same theory as Kang. And Immortus worked for the Timekeepers, and we already see the Timekeepers don't really exist. So I don't know.
What do you mean by Immortus being the future version of Kang?
I talked about this before. So think about yourself real quick. Think about you. You when you were 10, okay? Pretend that you as a 10-year-old decide to rule all of time and space, and you go out and use your time machine as a 10-year-old and do that. But then you realize that you as a 40-year-old is in charge of making sure that the timeline is kept sacred. Like something happened between the ages of 10, 40, but you changed. So in the Marvel Comics, Kang is a arch enemy of himself, the future version of himself, Immortus. Is that confusing?
Yeah. No, I think I got it.
Yeah, it's not that confusing to me. But it's very clever. I think it's a very clever story technique. Could be him. I don't think it's him. So how many theories is that? 3? Here's 2 more. Yeah. People are thinking that it's Mephisto, and the reason why people think it's Mephisto is because in the first episode, the little girl points out a painting of the devil. I don't think it's Mephisto.
Yeah, see, I think that was just the horns on Sylvie.
Yeah, and I just kind of feel like the comics are doing a really good job of pointing you in different directions and having people think all these different things. But I think the show writers and the showrunners' job is to make sure that we don't guess the truth, because then we'll be disappointed if we got it right. Here's my theory, and I definitely don't want to do this. I kind of just don't want to say anything, but I think as a person who does a podcast about comic book movies and comic books, I do think it is behoove it to me and you to have theories. So here's my theory. I think it's Loki. I think the main villain is going to be, when the curtain is revealed, it'll be him. That's my theory. Because it just
the Loki that we're watching right now, or
it'll be a variant. It'll be a different Loki. And here's why I think that. So much of this show is about Loki. And I kind of feel like that would be a good way to kind of close the circle. Being the very person who is trying to kill the variants is Loki himself, right? And so, or herself, who knows? That's my theory. And to be honest with you, I can't think of another villain that could be revealed that would be as satisfying as Loki. I just don't. I don't see that. Maybe it could be Agent Morbius in a different version of himself. That could be a reveal. We could be like, oh wow, but it just makes a lot more sense from a storytelling element, because that would be very cute. It fits into kind of like a mystique. Like we're trying to find the villain, and like if you think about WandaVision, we saw the villain all along. It was the witch person. What's her name? What was her name? Agatha. Yeah, that was kind of good. I like that. So that's my theory. I think at the end, maybe at the end of episode 5, probably, something's going to happen, and it is revealed that the real villain is Loki himself. He's the one that's been doing all this. He's the one that's been pruning time. He's the one doing all this stuff. I don't know if that's true.
Could be. I mean, there was, when they were showing those different variants, there was one that looked a little bit more like the devil than any of the other Lokis. Maybe that could have been who the little kid in Paris was pointing to. Maybe,
yeah, that's true. It's just, I feel like the Timekeeper reveal probably made some people mad.
Wait, I've got to throw out my
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. Dude, I just totally disrespected you. Yeah,
you're railroading me here.
I am. I didn't mean to do that. What's your thought? What's your hypothesis?
This is brilliant. I think it's Casey.
Which one's Casey?
Casey's the guy that was running the reception desk. Yeah.
That would be clever. I would actually.
They really run everything. So
yeah, if Casey shows up and he's the person who has the time TVA, that would be clever. But here's the deal: it all has to go. The entire TVA has to blow up, because we know for a fact that Doctor Strange and the Multiverse is coming up, and you can't have a movie called Doctor Strange and the Multiverse if it doesn't have a multiverse.
Right.
So we know it's coming. And to be honest, the whole sacred timeline thing could be a lie. And
yeah, I think we already have a multiverse. We've got to already have a multiverse with all those Lokis.
But we can't. You have to also establish all the power that TVA has. They have time travel abilities. They can travel through vast distances of time and space. Someone has that ability, so we have to see the answer to how they're doing that, who that is, and where they got it. And to be honest with you, there's only 2 more episodes left. I don't know how they'll do it. I really don't know how they're going to wrap this up in 2 episodes.
Right.
It's going to feel rushed. Like WandaVision was already wrapping up. Like we had the reveal of Agatha, and then it was 2 more episodes after. So like we don't have the big bad reveal yet, and so I don't know how they're going to do this one. It's going to be tight. I think next episodes we'll have a lot of stuff going on. It's going to happen real fast. It's going to be a little confusing, and then we're going to get like probably maybe I can see an hour and a half final episode, maybe 2 hour. No, it won't be 2 hours long, but it might be an hour and a half because they're going to have to finish up a lot of stuff. And like this show is so popular and people like it so much that they're going to have to kind of give us hints about where these characters are going. I don't see Sylvie just going away. I don't see Loki just going away. So,
right.
Where do you put these people? Like, where do you put Loki? Where do you put Sylvie? And Loki knows he's going to die at some point. Sylvie's like, what do you do? You know, so I'm very curious how they go wrap this. I don't know. I have no clue what they're going to do with this.
Yeah, I'm also going back to those publicity photos that they had before the show ever came out, where it shows Loki. He's got like a vote button on. Mm-hmm. It looks like he's marching through a place with a couple of guys behind him.
Yeah, and like he looks like he won some election or something. Yeah, you're right. So
yeah, like he's the new president of the TVA or something.
Yeah, that's a good. Yeah. And there's also a scene
where just a red herring, or is that coming up in the next 2 episodes?
It's going to happen next episode. But there's also a scene where he has a flaming sword. Did you see that? There's a scene in some of the trailers where he takes this flaming sword and points it to the sky and yells, "Come on!" And I'm like, "What? What is that? What is that flaming sword?" There's a couple. I mean, we haven't seen any flaming weapons or any kind of MacGuffins in the season so far, and I can't think off the top of my head any totems or any kind of like items in Marvel lore that it could be. So maybe I'll have to do some digging into it. But as of right now, I think it's fair to say that right now we are in uncharted territory. Like whatever's going on in the episode, we have no idea. If you look at WandaVision, you could easily see all the comic book threads forming around it. But this is just completely like we don't know what's going to happen.
Can you tell us something about those Lokis though?
No.
They don't come. There aren't multiple Lokis in the comics at all.
Well, we talked about that a little bit, and we've already done discussions about Sylvie and some other things. We've already talked about a woman Loki. There is a Kid Loki where Loki comes back as a child. I think I mentioned that in the 2nd episode.
I think you did, but as far as I remember, you just mentioned there was a Kid Loki.
There's a Kid Loki who was part of the Young Avengers at some point, so he that might show up. I think the Lizard Loki is a callback to Thor and the Frog Hammer, the kind of thinking that is. But I'm not sure who the other 2 are. And what I'm thinking is that
so there was never a black Loki in the comics.
No, but you know what? If you look at that scene again, there was an older Loki. He was in a traditional comic book style costume that looks like sort of like a costume you would make to go on Halloween, right?
Yeah, he shows up in IMDb as classic Loki.
Yeah, that's exactly. That's great because like I think he's the version of Loki we would expect back in the 80s if they made a Thor movie, you know? So we get sort of like the traditional Loki. And then the black guy who's a Loki could be more of a callback to more tradition Asgardian storytelling. You have what do they call him in that guy? What do they call him in the IMDb?
I don't see him yet.
So what we could be seeing is just different variants that represent different ideas of what Loki can and could be, you know, and it could just be fun. Maybe that entire place that they're in is just going to be a bunch of different Lokis, like hundreds of different Lokis. That could be interesting. But no, I have no idea who those guys are or what's going to happen. I seriously don't. I feel like I'm disappointing our 3 fans, like I said, because I don't know.
They must call him Boastful Loki.
Why is it? Loki. But they call him Boastful Loki. Okay. Yeah. So I think so.
Surprisingly, the crocodile or alligator Loki does not get a credit.
Oh, that's a shame. He deserves it. He's gonna be my favorite Loki without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Watch out for those fangs.
So I think last episode was a lot more fun as far as like action and like some different storytelling moves. I do like that Renslayer became more of a villain type, and I hope that she sticks around. I hope they don't get rid of her after this is over. I hope they keep everybody around actually. But who knows?
Right. What
So
else can you think to talk about on this one?
that's it, man. That's nothing else that happens. That's except the with the timekeepers. Did you see how they looked? I thought they looked really really good. At first, I like with the glowing eyes when they first got revealed. I was like, wow, that's creepy. But then when we started seeing them, they looked animatronic. They looked kind of like a joke. Not really, but they didn't look as scary. They looked like the timekeepers as you expect them to look if you were watching a comic book movie. And the fact that they were like fake, I thought was a pretty good move. But if the timekeepers aren't real, if those three things aren't the timekeepers or whatever, you have them, then we're losing a huge, huge chunk of storytelling. Like, we can't have a lot of the Avengers Forever stories that I thought we would have if the timekeepers don't exist. Like, they have to exist in order for those stories to work. So we would lose. So if the timekeepers don't come back, we're going to lose a huge treasure trove. Not a bunch of stories, but it's going to be like a lot of stories that we just won't get, which is probably fine.
I mean, just because those were robots doesn't mean there's not timekeepers hiding away somewhere else.
Yeah, but I think the show's also kind of telling us that, hey, the idea that there's three people called the timekeepers is just silly, you know? And maybe the show is trying to tell us this is more sophisticated than three weird alien dudes keeping time and space in check. Maybe it's something more than that. So
right,
we'll just have to wait and see.
Well, what do you think about young Sylvie?
I like
when they went back to snatch her.
Yeah, I like
her
that.
to the TVA.
I love that scene. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah,
because how terrified would that little girl be? You know, like terrified. Like you don't know where you are. You're being accused of something that you didn't do or didn't know you were doing, and then all of a sudden, like you're being held in front of a judge, and you're just a child. I wish the series could show us more about how Sylvie survived for that long. That would be awesome. That would be really, really awesome.
What do you think the rule that she broke was?
Just existing. You know, just existing, like being a girl version of Loki. Like I think that there can only be one version of Loki, and whenever there's a different version that pops up, I think the real question is what caused her to exist. Like what happened to make her female? You know, and what happened to make all the different Lokis we saw at the end of the episode? Like what keeps happening to make Lokis look different, and what happens just in general? I mean, is it the butterfly rule, right? Where like a butterfly flaps its wings here, and then in China it causes a hurricane. Like, there's some things storytelling wise that you can't explain. Like, you just can't explain it. So I'm kind of curious if they're ever going to address that. I don't think they will. It's just too much going on. But
yeah, I keep going back to Loki can only be born once in the sacred timeline, so it can't be that she just existed. That can't be why they went there and got her. I can't take credit for this, but I saw somebody on Twitter pose this, and I think it makes a lot of sense. So in this series, Mobius and Loki have had lots of conversations about how, what is Loki's role in life? What's he supposed to do? And he's the bad guy that loses so that other people can become good.
Yeah.
Or the best versions of themselves.
Yep.
And so what this person on Twitter posed is that when you see young Sylvie, she's playing with some toys and she's doing a let's save Asgard play. So she is already good.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
And that's why they came back and got her. And then, like, to further drive home that point, once she's in the TVA, the first thing she does is she sees some other variant being, like, mistreated. And she's like, save him, or something like that.
Or help him. Yeah, she does do that.
Yeah, help him. So she's got a good heart, and that's what the person thinks. If they went to go get her.
That's very clever. You need to find that somehow and post that in the chat note. Whoever's Twitter that was, we need to find it and post it into our show notes to give them some respect. But if that's true, if that theory is true, and I like that theory because it matches up with
solid.
Yeah, it matches up with my theory as well. If you don't remember, just to give myself a shout out. If that's true,
wait, what was your theory?
Because I said at the beginning that the reason why they create a variant and how the TVA found them on that world is because they started becoming good or hopeful or they understood.
Your theory for why when they were on Lamentus.
Yeah, how they got found. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so, it does match up with that.
Yeah, so let's put those two theories together. If that's true, then the villain of this TVA, the villain of this season, it has to be Loki. It has to be like a real pure evil Loki, right? Because he could be like, hey, there can only be one of me. There can only be one kind of me. Whenever there's a different kind, I have to purge it because that would ruin everything, Yeah. That could be, because if, let's say, for example, if baby Loki that we saw today decided to be good, we would never, that baby Loki would never have tried to take over Asgard. Thor would have never become himself because he wouldn't have anybody to fight. Then he wouldn't have stolen the Tesseract. The Avengers wouldn't have been formed. Thanos would have still existed, and Thanos would have still gotten the 6 stones and still would have destroyed all of time and space. But there wouldn't be Avengers to stop him. So maybe that's it. Maybe it's like you have to be a villain. Like you not being bad is a problem. So we'll just see. We'll just have to wait and see. I mean, that makes a lot of sense, and I hope I'm wrong. Because if I'm right, then I'm going to be super disappointed and bored when the reveal happens.
Yeah.
And we'll be like, oh, I have nothing to do now. But
we'll see. I mean, that's intriguing, and it kind of fits with why it's just called Loki.
Yeah, and to be honest with you too, is that I think Marvel does this, and I think this is what gets on some people's nerves. Marvel likes to give us red herrings, and Marvel likes to throw into our faces some comic book stuff and then have it twist and turn. They didn't do it much in WandaVision or Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Those two pretty much held up. But I think with Loki, they definitely want to keep us on our toes and show us a story that's going to be completely different than what they think. And I'm fine with that 100%, because there's only, they have 60 or 70 years worth of comic book material to play with, but at a certain point, they're going to run out. And I think by doing different things, playing around with different ways, looking at the recipe different ways, it allows them to kind of keep it going and to keep it interesting. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Yep.
But I think that's
normally save the post-credit scene until the end of the podcast, but we've covered that already.
Yeah. What do you think? Do you think they should have had that post-credit scene? Because that's a big story plot that if you didn't finish watching the whole episode, you would have missed. You would. I guess
don't know. People might have burned down the internet if they didn't have that post-credit scene.
Yeah, that's true. Man, I felt really weird when they showed him getting destroyed. I was like, Loki.
Yeah.
But I mean, of course, I felt more when Mobius got killed. I felt way more upset because I was like, ugh, that's rough. But
yeah, they had just, kind of made their alliance, popped out, and boom.
Yeah. So here's the things, before we wrap up, here's what we do absolutely know. The TVA are bad actors. They are doing bad things. They can't be trusted.
Deceitful.
Yeah, and for whatever reason they are keeping this quote-unquote sacred timeline pure, it's not for good reasons. And yeah, I think you're absolutely right. We can't believe them when they say that they're trying to start a multi-universe war. I think that it's something more than that, and we'll just have to wait and see. Right. So I'm really curious about the ending. It's only 2 weeks away, right? We only got two episodes left, so it's gonna be great.
Yeah, the next episode is gonna be a banger.
Yeah, I hope so. It better be.
There's got to be a lot going on.
Yeah, I think that's it though. I think we milked this cow as much as we could. That's funny.
Maybe there'll be a cow Loki in the next
I would hope
episode.
so. It looked like a little. Put like a little gold cap on his horns. It'd be great. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. All right. Well, we'll see you next week.
Yeah. See you guys next week. And as always, please like and review us. We're on Spotify. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on YouTube.
Your favorite YouTube.
I love YouTube. I love it. And where else are we at, Mike?
We're on Twitter at Super Sideshow.
Yeah.
And there.
I would love to have a conversation with someone about this stuff. So if you see me on Twitter, it's at JAYSLSEKS. Oof, barely spell. If you see me online, hit me up. We'll do some conversating because this is fun. I think the show's fun, but I do think that a lot of the comic stuff is starting to fade away and go into a different route. So we'll just have to see how it goes.
I'm sure it's going to be making a comeback. Well, we had one light episode as far as comic.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe we'll get. And we do have a lot of variants, so maybe those variants are going to be doing a lot of cool stuff. So I can't wait.